2, 1. Nice. Okay, guys, super special treat here on the Strong Life podcast. I'm here with my new friend, Ivan, who I wish I was friends with decades ago. His father is the founder of Ivanko Barbell, and we finally met at Summer Strong a couple weeks ago. It was Summer Strong 14. And we were chatting, Ivan, like we were old friends, because I was talking about my history of growing up using Ivanko Barbell. So welcome to the Strong Life podcast. First ever podcast for Ivanko, by the way.
Yes. Thank you. Honored to be here.
I am honored. And we will let the stories unfold as we go. And I want to give people, I want you to share a little history of Ivanko. You and I are not very far apart in age. And so you were brought into your father's business really during the kind of golden era, you know, a little bit past, I think, the golden era of bodybuilding. I'd say it was the golden era of Hollywood with all the really big guys in Hollywood. And I want to preface everything with this, Ivan. So I'm here in New Jersey. You guys are based in LA, Los Angeles, and Ivanko Barbell. I've come across your plates everywhere I go. But if I come across York Barbell, people on the West Coast really can't find York. You guys are in other countries, you're overseas. And I was thinking about that. I was like, wow, here's Ivanko, you know, all around the world. And I'm in a private Facebook group for like York Barbell vintage collectors. And everybody on the West Coast can't find York Barbell. But you guys are everywhere, which speaks to the power of Ivanko. So can we go back to early days, young Ivan being brought into Ivanko Barbell?
Yeah. So the business was founded in the late 60s. And it was primarily weightlifting belts and what were called waist trimmers. That's neoprene sweatsuits.
I remember that.
And we had teamed up to get the raw material with a small company at the time called Body Glove that was down the street from us.
The surf wetsuit company.
Right.
Wow.
So it was a pair of brothers who were from Missouri, actually from the same hometown as my grandmother. I just found that out about a year ago. A very small town in Missouri. They had come out here and they had a business called Dive and Surf. So we would buy the Rubitex, it was called, a closed cell neoprene rubber. And my parents would cut and sew these suits and they would make weightlifting belts. We still have the original machinery to the dies to stamp and cut the weightlifting belts. So they were doing that. My father was involved in weight training at Bill Pearl's gym and a few other places in Los Angeles.
Which was Los Angeles. So in the late 60s, Ivan, if you don't mind me asking, how old were you?
Well, I was born in 1970, but this is just the very early years.
Yes.
So my first memories, my father was a weightlifting instructor at the YMCA. So I'm thinking I was 5 or 6, I would go to the gym and do my homework there.
Yes.
At the local YMCA. And he was an instructor. He was also making equipment at that time.
Where did he make equipment? Out of the garage or?
Yeah. Well, my grandparents, their original office was in the basement of a ballet studio that my grandparents had. My grandparents were ballet dancers, had a ballet studio. So we lived on top of it. And in the basement was their business. So that was what they were doing. He was also buying some equipment from Bell Foundry and making dumbbells.
Which was where? What was
Bell Foundry was in Bell, California, which is just up the road from us. Not too far up in Los Angeles proper.
Right.
Or Los Angeles County, rather, I believe. And he was doing that. Bell Foundry stopped selling to him because he was making his own easy curl bar. They were offering an easier curl bar. They wouldn't sell him a collar. So he had to buy a collar.
Mm-hmm.
So he bought something like 50 or 60,000 pounds of collars.
Holy.
And none of them fit. So he had to drill them all out by hand with about 5 guys from the local high school. I still run into those people and they said they've never forgotten it, having to just drill on an old drill press, the opening hole for the
Yes.
collar. And
Well,
you know, so that, and then, so I remember that.
what was the first? So your dad started with the waist trimmers, which was back then very popular. That's kind of what they, you know, what was sold to women back then was like trimming and sweating things out.
Right.
And then for the men, you know, biceps were very big with Arnold coming on the scene in the late 60s. And then what's interesting, so was your dad's first piece of gym equipment the curl bar?
I believe one of his first pieces of equipment was the curl bar, but he was also making benches, dumbbell racks. We still have a few benches. I'll send you some pictures.
I can't wait to see.
They were made out of wood. And I'm trying to remember whose gym it was.
Was it the Dungeon where Dave Draper trained? Because he said the benches he used, it was made out of wood.
Yes, he did make one out of wood because the guy who asked for it, I'm blanking on the name, but we have some of the original gym materials here. He didn't want any padding on the equipment.
Why? What was his reason? And who was it? Do you remember?
Yeah, he didn't want people to be comfortable.
Was it Vic Tanny or?
No. And I'm sorry, you should have my dad on because he's forgotten a lot, but every so often he remembers something.
Yes.
And it'll come to me.
Okay, it'll happen as we chat.
He had done a lot of that type of work, and he was making dumbbells, his own handles. He was also he was a sheet metal worker.
Right.
So he was studying to be a machinist. So he took a lot of those metalworking skills and applied them to what was an interest of his, you know, bodybuilding and weightlifting.
You know, unfortunately, when I was in high school, we had metal shop, but I think they cut it after maybe my sophomore year. So I took wood shop and metal shop. And now, you know, that I'm so addicted to the training. Back then, I didn't have the mind of making stuff, but if I certainly could have gone back in time, I'd get back to metal shop.
Well, they should have they should have all shop back in the United States.
I know. It would be
thing to do, I think.
To work with hands. You and I had this conversation last week about how these foundries that's why it's so hard to find gym equipment, you know, domestic. And it's struggle to find it. And so you're born, I'm a little bit younger than you. I'm born in 75. So 70s is the golden era of bodybuilding. And did your dad see like an influx of the need to make equipment? Because Joe Weider really had kind of the control of things with equipment and whatnot. So that's an interesting time.
Well, Weider, was huge. And York Barbell was still a force.
On the East Coast, or was it?
With the Turpacs. They did have a warehouse in Southern California. I don't know for how long, but I've run into one or two guys that worked at that warehouse years ago. They did have a small distribution center.
And what was the conversation like when you ran into those guys?
I wish I still had the guy's name, but he had one of the original bars that was made for Alexiev that he couldn't take back to the Soviet Union.
Oh my God.
So, and the story that this guy told me had the ring of truth. So I've always regretted not misplacing his information.
What's the ring of truth?
Well, the story he told me sounded true. Oh. You know, you never know. I mean, a lot of guys, you know, I mean, there's a lot of, when you start talking equipment, you know, a guy will spin a yarn or tell a tale, but this one sounded right. You know, he was the right age, and he knew a lot about the bars. And so I've regretted not staying in touch with this guy, but I'd love to find him and see this bar in person. I have met some of the people, one of the shops that worked on some of the equipment for York out in California. So I don't know for how long York had a presence out here, but they were out here for a while.
You'd have to get in touch with Jan Dellinger, who I interviewed not this summer, the previous summer. He gave me a tour of the York Barbell Hall of Fame Museum. And so he's quite the historian because he worked at York for quite some time.
Uh-huh. Oh.
So he might be a guy that's, you know, the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
in the strength and conditioning world.
Yeah.
So, you know, I for the people listening or watching, the first gym I joined, minus the YMCA, I joined a YMCA in Metuchen, New Jersey. And then the first gym I joined was called Dynamic Fitness in Edison. And the entire gym was outfitted with Ivanko plates. And it was the most beautiful rumbling sound ever. And so you did homework at the YMCA. I did homework at this gym. And, you know, it was a calming effect for me. I would train and then do my homework and have a protein shake at their juice bar. Or sometimes if I wasn't lifting, I still went there to do my homework, to use those plates. And I still have these Ivanko plates. And it's amazing how people still love them and are so connected to them. And it's just, to me, it's wild that the staying power, because a lot of companies do not have staying power. Even, and you and I have said this before, you guys don't have a big social presence. You don't have a website that's like super fancy, but the equipment is just bomb proof and it outlasts your own words of it, you know?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We were talking before, a new website is in progress. We've been cursed with delays, but you're right. We should step up our social media game and get all those old photos of the history out. I think, I remember my dad said, we're too dumb to quit or not to stay in business. And he said, only a fool gets in the barbell business because it's big, it's heavy, it takes forever to move it around, takes up a lot of space, and the margins aren't huge. But yeah, we keep, we seem to have staying power, and we keep doing what we're doing. But part of what's important to us is the aesthetics. So like that 3-spoke plate, that's an iconic plate.
Right. What do you guys call that plate?
From the Paramount Plate. Paramount, which was up the road from us, founded in 1954, made that, or had a plate made for them like that, a 3-spoke. And we took it and looked at it and said, how can we make this the best looking plate we can with the right proportions? And the person who drew those plates by hand was David Willoughby, author of Super Athletes,
the
strongman history.
Yes.
So he took those and by hand, he drew them, calculated the proportions in his head, and we started making those. And that's been something that we've been selling, I think, since about the mid to late 70s. So part of the staying power is we make good looking, simple, functional, high quality equipment. And we just keep going,
It does look great. The equipment is certainly, you get the feel of it that it's high-end stuff, the same way as looking at a car. I'm looking at a Honda or I'm looking at a Ferrari. Ivanko has this, Ferrari and high-end auto look to it. And so just interesting timing though, Ivan, of, in the 70s, making a plate like that was very rare. And so when did you start working with your dad, kind of getting into it full time?
Well, I had worked full time a little bit in the 90s. And I'd always worked on or off more or less during the summers or spare time. And I came back to the business in 2007, 2008, about that time, full time.
Okay. Yeah.
And have been here ever since.
What's interesting though is I didn't know you were full-time 07, 08, because when you and I chat, we spoke about these kind of eras of the training. Yeah. So in the 70s, we had the golden era of bodybuilding. Then the 80s, when Arnold transitioned to Hollywood, Sly started getting, more movies outside of Rocky. What did that do for your dad's business with people wanting muscles? That was huge.
Yeah, no, the 80s 70s and 80s up through the early 90s was we moved a lot of weight.
Who were the people buying? Because there was, I think Jack LaLanne had his franchise, and there was a lot of mom and pop gyms, you know, and of course Gold's Gym was a franchise. Powerhouse and World Gym were popular through the 80s. Who were the people buying weights from you guys? Do you recall?
We generally sold through large distributors and sporting goods stores, both chains. And I think Broadway and 14th or Broadway and 13th than almost any other store. For some reason, they bought more plates and bars than almost anyone.
Who, say that again, because you froze up. So who?
Sorry, Paragon Sports.
Yeah.
And they were the classic sporting goods store. I think 5 or 6 stories that had everything in downtown Manhattan on Broadway.
Right.
We probably moved more through them as a store than almost anyone. And they weren't a huge store. They weren't a chain store, but we put a lot of weight there.
I wonder if Brian Moss purchased Ivanko plates for his Better Bodies gym, which was Manhattan.
Could be. We did Mid-City Gym.
Yep. That's a quote unquote old school gym that was
right.
around for a very long time. What were guys in, you know, I've gotten your deep dish Ivankos. What's the proper term for those plates?
We call them OM.
What is
Olympic machined? Just OM plates.
And so were there plates aside from the Zuver plates that had that lip to them that you knew of or your dad knew of? Well, York had deep dish, correct?
York had deep dish at different times.
Right.
I don't recall them having one in the 80s. I do remember spending time with the York people at trade shows when I'd go there during the 80s. I'd go to trade shows and meet all these different guys, and that was interesting. I remember Paramount having the plate. I don't know if they were still making it at that time, but there were a lot out there.
Right.
I don't think there were a huge number of those deep dish plates out.
And what was the kind of inspiration behind that plate? Because it's perfect. Was it for the safety of grabbing with the fingers?
Well, I mean,
inside?
you got the lip, so you can grab it and pick it off the floor a little easier. I mean, unless they flip it over the other way, and then you can pick it up. You can still pick it up on the edge or at the center hole.
Right.
I think, you know, my dad has always been interested in proportionality and art and aesthetics. So I think that has always been a driving factor for the design of our products.
Yeah, you could
thinking about the way things are made, no extraneous detail, and just even obsessing over the spacing of lettering or the chamfer on a lip of a plate. It's just all important to us, you know, the way we do anything.
I think to be great at anything, you need that, you know, OCD. You need that obsession where you're putting something out and you say, this is just not it. This has to get better.
Yeah, no, we like doing that. That's actually one of the most interesting things about making something is trying to think about it and make it as, you know, the beauty in everyday objects. These are tools, right? In a way, these are, I think on our Facebook page, we list ourselves as a tool company, not a fitness company.
Because we figure
these are tools, you know, and it's like a wrench. You can get a wrench from anywhere. Some wrenches are better than others, and, you know, but we really care about making good tools. Right.
So let's go back. You and I had this conversation about, so I didn't know that, you know, your full-time with your dad's company started 07, 08, because the 80s and 70s was a real interesting time, you know, so we're both, you know, technically 80s kids. We grew up in that BMX, skateboard, surf, even punk rock. Everything was like against, you know, the
establishment.
The establishment against the institution.
Yeah.
And, you know, you and I said that even those kind of mom and pop gyms were very much paralleled the surf, skateboard, and BMX. Like, you know, when I was a kid in the 80s, there were signs everywhere. You know, we would ride in the back of this, I mean, it was a golf place, talk about early days golf place, but it had a concrete quarter pipe. I mean, it wasn't meant for us. We would be back there jumping and riding our skateboard. So there were signs, no skateboarding, no BMX. Yeah. Everything was, don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah, right.
And it actually just inspired us to do it more, you know, like to be totally against it. And then I clearly recall, this is interesting, Ivan, I clearly recall the mid 90s where I remember I was training for my first bodybuilding show. Gyms started opening up that were not necessarily just filled with weights, you know? So the gym I grew up in, Dynamic Fitness, had a couple of bikes, a couple of Stairmasters, and that's it. And then everything was weights. And then a gym opened up that started getting spin class, but also weights, and then had body pump, which I think you guys may have gotten into because you had the rubber plates, the early days, I guess, like standard bumper plates, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I noticed that when these kind of strength / bodybuilding places, they got nervous at these places that offered a lot of things, and they tried to conform to them, and it would put them out of business. They would paint their equipment a different color. They felt like, you know, all these things didn't work. So what did you see with your dad as these gyms started to evolve? Like lots of Golds, Worlds, Powerhouse Gym. They went from small weight training places to like massive places with 20, 30 pieces of cardio equipment of each thing. You know, they became monster places. What changes did your dad kind of communicate to you in the business in that late 80s into the 90s, mid 90s? Do you recall?
Well, I remember we partnered with companies like Hammer Strength when they started.
To do what?
Offer the plates in conjunction with their plate loaded equipment.
Yes.
So when they started, when Life Fitness started way back, they were in California. We partnered with them, with Cybex. At the time too, that all these machine companies were coming up, we were making the weight stacks for the majority of these companies. That was probably our biggest business at one point, is the weight stacks
that go inside the machines.
Right. Yeah. You know, the 10 pound, 20 pound, 5 pound weight stacks with a center bar, a top plate, you know, you attach cables to, and you have a pen. So we were doing a lot of that. So I do remember I remember racquetball was big, right? You know, a lot of these
clubs,
racket
health and racket clubs.
And
there was a big one by me. It was called Woodbridge Health and Racket Club. And I mean, massive racket, indoor tennis, swimming pool, indoor track. Yeah. It's everywhere, you know. And you have a unique memory too, Ivan. Like I mentioned Zoovers, and you know about Zoovers, which is interesting that you know about these companies, but weren't really full-time in the business with your dad yet.
Well, as a kid, I was a big reader. I loved to read. I think we were talking about how your parents would drop you off at the bookstore and you just sit there and bookstore. Yeah, well, likewise. Or I'd go to the library and just read all the time. But, you know, at our house, we didn't have a huge number of books, but I remember we had all of Sandow's magazines from the late 19th century on. Yeah. And I wanted to read anything. So I just flipped through those. Yes. So there were a lot of strength books that I had read when I was, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, yeah. And I just guess I picked it up and I just remember what I read. And it wasn't a passion, but it was interesting. Yes. You know, some of the feats of strength and that kind of thing. It was interesting to me. I mean, it was
the way they wrote.
Alien world from the everyday life, right?
Oh, yeah.
In a sense, you know.
Yeah, the way they would write was very interesting.
Yeah. On the rise of the chain gym, I wonder if it isn't that a lot of these independent places could be intimidating.
Yeah.
So it just seems to me natural that, you know, other people came in and said, hey, here's a place that's kind of upscale and clean. There's no chalk, you know, it's not filthy. And
right.
a lot of guys didn't care, you know, but maybe there's this market for a more upscale type of gym. Like, remember what Richard Sword was saying? I just listened to a podcast you did to him. He said, hey, we went to this place and guys were working out in their flannel shirts. They didn't change.
Yep.
There was no like workout wear. It hadn't
Correct.
been modified. It's like whatever you worked in, you came there. You didn't
huge.
shower before or after, and you just went in there. And that's kind of the way I remember the YMCA. I don't think they let a kid be in the YMCA today, like sitting on a bench doing homework. There's chalk in the air. There are no mirrors. Yeah. Dumbbells being dropped everywhere. I mean, you know, I don't think they'd let a kid like a 6-year-old in that environment anymore, you know?
Right. The early YMCAs, the one that I went to, and I know there were some very popular ones, you know, in all the big cities. There was, you know, the one that I was in a small town called Metuchen, and it was all York equipment, York isometric rack. It even had that weird York leg press, which was like a strange, it wasn't like a big one like what you normally see. And then when I was a senior in high school, they got rid of it. They moved it upstairs, and then it was just clean carpet, Body Masters equipment, you know, all machines, and just all the old dumbbells were gone. And I look at when I would go there as a kid, that was the first gym I went to. Everybody was like Pops. They trained in flannels, work boots. I remember truck drivers would park their they didn't have the trailer attached, but they had their truck, so it wasn't the full 18-wheeler. And you saw these guys lifting with construction gloves on, which actually made the training harder. They probably didn't really realize it. They were just strong, tough guys. And so yeah, thinking of, you know, back to training at that first gym I went to, man, it was 7,500 square feet, everything Ivanko plates. The dumbbells, I'm not sure if they were Ivanko because he was always kind of welding them on his own. Something would break, he'd go in the back.
We did make, are you talking about Richard's?
Not Richard.
Okay.
This guy's name was Vinny Ciccone.
Okay.
He owned Dynamic Fitness. So let's talk about Pops. What was the first thing he purchased from you guys?
Well,
do you remember?
I was actually looking for the original Soren X invoices. I believe they started, he would know, we were talking about this. I don't want to misquote him, but it was about 87, 88.
Wow.
He had met, I think the first time my dad and him met was I think at one of the delis in New York, Stage Deli or another deli. They were sitting next to each other or across from each other.
What were they doing in New York? What was going on?
I think my dad was at I don't know if it was, they used to both go to the old time, the Association of Old Time Barbell and Strongman, or Strongman and Barbell and Strongman.
Yeah.
And I had gone a few times with them, but I don't think I was there this time. I don't know if it was for that or if it was just a random thing, but they both started talking about strength training and they got to know each other. I can't remember. I think it was a random meeting, which is weird, but, I think, you know, Richard would buy dumbbell parts from us and put them together.
Right.
He had told me about the University of Kentucky story, which I think he's done a podcast about how he had 4 pairs from 5 to 175, I think. And he had to take, and he did these for the University of Kentucky, and he had to carry them
across the
field.
Wow.
It's the most heroic story I've ever heard of. I mean, just people, you know, they wanted him to fail, as I understand it, one of the coaches didn't want him to have the contract. He makes all this equipment, spends all night doing it, or all weekend or all week with welding and upholstery and dumbbells, gets everything together, and he has a time limit. And he goes across the field. You know, you can't park very close to the training center. and he and his crew have to hand carry everything.
It's
and he's got to lift these 175s out of these crates, which, you know, when you think about it, like a crate 30 or 40,
that's
50 inches deep, trying to get that thing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you know,
what?
And
well, it's crazy that, you know, I don't see people using 175 dumbbells. Barely ever see them. I've seen them at Diamond Gym. I think we had 180s.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were from you guys. They had those thick bolts that went in.
We recess our bolts, so, you know, it's safer.
Right.
And also a guy can rest it on his thigh, right?
They were like, they had that hammer tone gray, and then the outside plate was like almost chrome. And then that bolt was flush inside of it.
Oh yeah, that's probably us then. That was our original design. We did the gray with the chrome.
I helped. I remember when they arrived in a milk crate, and not a milk crate, in the wooden crate, the wooden crates, and John Kemper wasn't there. Shirley was there, and I had just finished training, and everything was kind of dropped on the sidewalk in front of the gym. And we moved the old dumbbells, put them next to the staircase, and we emptied out that whole wooden crate of all the dumbbells and set it up. And Shirley was so grateful. She's like, "Oh my God, thanks guys." But I took so much pride training at Diamond Gym, and those dumbbells were awesome, Ivan. They were not the traditional diameter handle. They were slightly thicker, if I'm recalling correctly.
Well, I think the original handles that most guys used until the 90s were 27 millimeter. And then we started going to 30 millimeter, which is what the Germans were using a lot. And then we upped it to 35 millimeter, is what we're doing now on a lot of our handles. You know, we sell some of the heavier dumbbells. I don't know how much they get used. I've seen them dropped a lot because
who's buying all these heavy? So it's interesting that football team wanted 175s. I wonder what they did with them, if they had guys that could actually press them.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, my dad was telling me that, you know, at Bill Pearl's gym, you had to earn your place. And it was always a little bit, there was always like this threat, there were a couple guys that were a little unhinged in there, and you had to know how to gauge people and deal with it. And so he said, you know, he could do 120s for reps, but he'd always try to push himself a little bit more, you know, go up to like 140 or something, because, or as high as even if he could only do one or two, just because you had to go up higher to get your place in the gym, you know?
I tell you, you had to earn respect. And also, if there were weird people in the gym, which every gym always had one or two weird guys, one or two guys that were in and out of jail on the regular.
Exactly.
You had that. And so, you know, I speak of this often, is like my beginning of exercise and doing push-ups was not like kids of today who do, you know, go to a strength coach and train for sport or train for the attraction of girls. I was like, if I don't do these push-ups, you know, the bullies in the area, I will have no respect from others, and I won't have confidence in myself. And, you know, my buddy John Welburn says, you know, if a kid gets bullied, the best way to stop him from getting bullied is to put on 30 pounds of muscle. Then people won't bother. They're not going to bother you as much. But I'm jumping around a lot with these topics.
Right.
So Ivan, with dumbbells, what's interesting is if I recall reading possibly from Dave Draper and hearing stories, and just through my experience, the dumbbells from the 70s, like Joe Gold would make dumbbells, Zuver, their handles were were slightly thicker than what started happening in the 90s. Like they basically, kind of how I explained Sornex, the people who built it, they lift. Even the dumbbell racks, if you see the dumbbell racks at Zuver's, they were exactly hip height versus a dumbbell rack that was tiered, and you had to reach out in front to grab dumbbells, which is actually which is a great way to pull your back.
I was reminded of that talking to a power lifter, Sam Aldewenda, were making a plate rack for powerlifting competitions. And he said, you know, anybody who's making this rack has to have loaded and unloaded the bar at a competition all day. Because if you haven't done that and had a sore back at the end of the day, you don't know how to design the thing.
Right. What did he say about the proper design?
Well, he was saying, look, you got to think about the elevation of the rack. You don't want to have to bend down,
correct,
you know, hundreds of times a day. I mean, no matter how strong you are, it's just, you want to be smart about the way you design. And that stuck with me, you know? So it's the same thing when, the other thing to do when you design something, from my point of view, is you got to dummy proof it. That is, how is it going to be abused? You know, you can say all day long, hey, you're not supposed to, you know, don't drop the dumbbells. Don't abuse this, you know? And, but you got to think, okay, is a guy going to, you know, he's going to drop it. You don't want it to break. I mean, there's so many different things you got to think about when designing equipment, because you know it's going to be abused.
People don't take care of stuff.
No, they don't take care of stuff
unless it's their own.
Try to make it as strong as you can and think about the design and the materials and that kind of thing.
Right. I mean, I look at at the high school I'm at, you know, there was some bumper plates from Sweden left outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they were propping doors open with them.
Yeah.
And never brought them back in.
Yeah.
Same thing with those Ivanko bumpers I showed you. They're missing like that brass.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is that thing?
Calibration plug. Yeah.
Okay. So they're missing that because they left them outside in winter, summer, rain, you name it. And it's such a shame, you know, when people do that. So do you guys make dumbbell racks and also the barbell plate holders, plate trees, like this guy was asking about?
We do plate trees, and we make a lot of dumbbell racks. We base it off of an old Muscle Dynamics design, slightly tweaked. Muscle Dynamics was up the road from us for years.
What happened to all these companies you tell me about that were up and down the road from you?
They're either got bought or they're out of business. They were sold and but you're right. I hadn't thought about it, but I mean, but you're right. I mean, a lot of these guys are gone. I mean,
right.
I mean, Los Angeles had a proud tradition of manufacturing at one time. A lot of aerospace out here and a lot of great machine shops and, you know, some of that is gone. You know, there's still remnants and pockets of it, but there were a lot of different people making equipment in the greater Los Angeles area. I think fewer now, but
right. I've heard of Muscle Dynamics. So is your dumbbell rack kind of what I was talking about at hip height, like one tier though? That's a tough thing about it.
No, it's not. They are knockdown racks that bolt together with bent legs. They're angled. They're 2 to 3 tier.
What's a knockdown rack mean?
Knockdown means you can take it apart. So the legs, like Sorinex does. I mean, it used to be we welded everything, but these days it's hard to get it around and move it.
Right.
A lot of them we sell to Japan and overseas.
Yeah, you mentioned so much business.
They need
overseas.
to be able to get it through small doors and areas. But I do like the Sorinex design of that flat sort of that. Waist high or a little, you know, dumbbell.
Yeah. Well, if you looked at, you know, Zuver's, of course, was such a unique place, but I think it was just like a row. And I don't think they had a bottom or any, you know, they didn't have multiple tiers. It was just everything at hip height going across. Yeah. So that was really interesting. And something that just came to my mind is, you know, I mentioned that health and racket club that was in the area that I grew up. Next to them was a Bally's, or I guess it was called Jack LaLanne back then. I don't think it was called Bally's, but I remember everything was chrome. And you guys it's a very sought after, you know, for these collectors. They have the chrome Ivanko plates. Yeah. You know, Pops has them. Are you guys still making the chrome plates?
we're doing very few chrome parts. We still chrome small things, but
why would that, or when did that start and why did it end?
well, it started, I think, in the 70s, and it ended probably 10, 15 years ago. It's harder to get good chrome plating. It's super expensive. Quality control can be a nightmare. And I made the decision that, unless I wanted to have one guy go through every single piece and check it. And when you think about it, it sounds easy, but if you've got an order for a bunch of 45s, to have one guy sitting there taking each one out of the box, inspecting it, putting it back into a crate.
Right.
It's hard to do.
No doubt. There's a guy.
I mean, I guess you can charge more for it, but it just didn't. We thought about let's return to it at another point, but we'd rather focus on having more inventory. And then you got to remember every time you offer a style of plate, you got to carry every single size. If you're out of one size, people don't want to order often. And then you got to carry it in kilos and pounds, or at least we do for the most part.
Right. Why, there's a guy on Instagram, Efren Lifts. He's got all Did he order directly from you or did he find it?
Yeah. I think Efren contacted us during the pandemic.
Okay.
And we only had a couple people working here during the pandemic.
Right.
But, we could count on a telephone call from old Efren, and
he's really got some.
Yeah, he's an enthusiast. Stuff. Yeah. He's a good guy. And
he's an enthusiast.
He bought some stuff from us. I think he bought one of every kind of bar we made.
All right. So when I met you at Sornex, you had a few different barbells. And I mentioned to you, so ironic, how so much of my started with Ivanko. Was the first gym, all Ivanko. My first legitimate barbell was an Ivanko, which I ordered by communicating with a guy that used to work for you through AOL Instant Messenger, which tells people, if you're old enough, what AOL Instant Messenger is.
Right.
He was he was always on AOL Instant Messenger. And so I remember buying my first real barbell, and I gave it to one of my wrestlers last year during COVID. So I had that barbell since training out of my parents' house, which we're talking 2002. So I gave it to a kid in 2020. Mm-hmm. It's 18 years old and it's perfect still. And it wasn't, it was like not even your high-end bar. And it's 18 years, which, if people want to, when they are like, oh, I don't know about the cost of this or that, break down, 12, what would you pay for something per month? And here it is 18 years later. It comes out to like $1. It's nothing, not even. It lasts forever, which Ivan, being my second house here, I had, we bought, new refrigerator, washing machine, microwave. And I say to the guy, like, I just bought this dishwasher and you're servicing it like 3 months later. I go, I grew up in my dad's house and the microwave, from like third grade, it's like 20. He says, those companies go out of business because they never break. He goes, things have to break. Ivan, nothing breaks on Ivanko.
Yeah, no, that's probably my favorite customer, is the one that only buys once, or at least this one type of thing.
It's crazy.
It's such a good feeling to make something that lasts a long time. And one of the best things of the last year is guys calling us and saying, hey, I had this bar. It's been in my barn or, outside or in a shed for the last 20 years. Do you have parts for it? Wow. And more often than not, I do. I mean, there's not a lot of parts in an Olympic bar, and it's a simple type of thing, but I've had guys contact me about bars in the 70s. Hey, do you have the shoulder bolt? Yeah, I probably do.
What was it called? A shoulder one?
Shoulder bolt. That,
shoulder bolt.
Old days, we made one bar here in Los Angeles that the sleeve connected to the bar with a shoulder bolt that kept the sleeve onto the shaft of the bar. Yeah. And I still have those original bolts. We got a big box of them. So it's a good feeling to make something that lasts a long time. And yeah, I like you, I don't like this idea of built-in obsolescence, of planned obsolescence, of making something that's going to fall apart in, a certain number of years, or that's going to break down in a certain number of years. I like the idea of building something to last. And it's a good feeling,
With this, I've had this conversation with my buddy, John Wellborn from Power Athlete.
Mm-hmm.
He used to have a big gym in Orange County, a big CrossFit gym. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I think, if I ever did it again, it would be a boutique gym where it was like a wall down the middle where one side was very like high end and posh. And that would be for people that want more of like the comfortable stuff. Mm-hmm. And then the other end would be just like, Metallica and heavy metal and heavy weights. And Ivanko can serve both, which is really, I just think that it's awesome. So let's talk about, people listening to me have, we're common in the warehouse gym business, 1,000, 2,000, maybe 5,000 square feet, but they need, 5 barbells. They need dumbbells. They need bumpers. I mentioned to you that I'm going to be purchasing bumper plates from you. And the tough thing is choosing which ones I really want.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, do you, guys like me, have you been in touch with guys like me with these smaller warehouse gyms reach out to you? I wonder what do they tend to purchase? What's their common purchase / investment?
Well, over the last few years, we've sold a lot of sets of dumbbells.
Which ones, Ivan? Because you have the bumpers, and then what are the ones called with like the steel with the bolt, or what's the?
Okay, so we have, we principally have cast iron dumbbells, rubber encased dumbbells, so cast iron cores with rubber around them, and that. Some guys like those because it's easier on equipment, and some guys don't like the noise. And the rubber dumbbells we had at Gold's Gym, in their outdoor gym, for about 30, 35 years they lasted. So I sell a lot of those. And then we make a urethane dumbbell, a steel core with a urethane around it.
Is that the one that colleges tend to get?
A lot of colleges have gone that way, and sometimes we partner with Sorinex on some of those installations.
Yep.
So that's a good basic. So you have 3 choices, good, somewhat better, and best. And, we make about 12 different bars here in the United States.
What about go back to the dumbbells. Do you still make the dumbbells that I mentioned from Diamond Gym?
Oh, yeah.
What is that one called again?
Well, we use all the original part numbers that my dad came up with in the 70s. But so we call them RM for regular machined / EPC, end plate chrome.
Oh yeah, end plate chrome. And so I love those.
Yeah, so that we still do that, and
those are cool.
We're jumping up, and in fact, I got to show you this piece of chrome I just did.
Go ahead.
Hold
on. Step away.
See if I can find it.
Very exciting, guys.
Now I'm making these little end plates here that jump up in 2.5 pound kilo, 2.5 pound increments.
Yeah.
So it's just a piece of steel, and we've machined this area here.
Right.
So it fits snugly against the collar of the inside collar of the dumbbell.
And it's magnet, or they have to bolt
no,
it?
These are just pieces of steel that we've chromed, and it goes within a larger dumbbell assembly.
Right.
And so you have the bar, you put those on the inside, and then they weigh 1.25 pounds each. And then we put the plates on, and then we put the end plate, and then we torque it with a bolt. And so we're always playing around with different chrome things. I mean, I like chrome, and I'd like to start doing more chrome.
Is chrome, I don't have air conditioning in my gym, and people that have like a gym, people are now starting to kind of leave the gym business and buying land and setting up in like a barn, will chrome rust? It will eventually rust.
Any metal or most metals will rust, especially if there's surface contaminants on it.
And you're by the ocean.
We're by the ocean. I mean,
as am
chrome
I.
will eventually oxidize. You know, you got to take care of it.
Yeah.
The other reason we kind of got away from all chrome dumbbells was, okay, you got a cast iron plate and you have a chrome is harder and it's over the plate, and you bang those together, you can chip.
Yes.
You know, at least with a decorative chrome, a shiny chrome.
Jack LaLanne had a full chrome setup at his house. Did you guys outfit?
No, I don't think so.
He had machines and dumbbells, and everything was chrome.
Yeah, well, that's why you got to get my dad on eventually. He remembers a lot.
Yep.
He's got all kinds of stories about everybody.
Right.
Not all of them suitable for public dissemination, but
right.
A lot of them are good. Yeah.
Have to be a private seminar, we'll have to get him to Summer Strong.
Yeah.
What so, and then I mentioned the bumper plates that I've used. I used them. They had them in an old weight room at Rutgers where they've got, you said, the calibration plug.
Yeah.
Right.
So we still make those.
What are those called?
OCB, Olympic Calibrated Bumper.
Is that your entry level bumper, or is that?
We have one other bumper in pounds or kilos, OBPX, Olympic Bumper Plate. X stands for heavy duty. They're both about the same price.
Yeah.
We just didn't want to get rid of the calibrated bumpers because a lot of guys still ask for them, and we get emotional about those things that we've had forever.
You do. You get emotionally attached to them. So, do you recall anybody who's made a big order of the OCB bumper recent? Because they've got to be, when I was at Rutgers, it was in the College Ave Gymnasium, which is such an old building. So that weight room and that room was very old. So I'm not sure how old those plates were. You had mentioned there used to be like a distributor in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And then the one at my high school could be 20 plus years old easily.
Yeah.
Which is, Ivan, in 20 years, I'm 65. I could still use it.
Oh yeah.
Being, it blows my mind. So do you recall who has made a big order of those OCB bumpers?
Well, we just did a real large order up to a customer up in Canada. I think bought everything we had. It was during the pandemic.
For his house,
a distributor.
Or for a business?
No, it was a distributor for Canadian government sales.
Oh, so selling to like military and whatnot?
That's right. Yeah. So we've done a lot of that as well.
That has been what's happened like in the past 2 years is the government. There's a contract company that they're hiring strength coaches on every base for special ops personnel. And they're taking, I think they're looking, of course, at the performance, but they're also looking at the mental health benefits, which I think is a big focus right now with government. So that's probably, I'm sure people have reached out to you for outfitting. They go with Sornex a lot for the equipment.
Definitely. That was one of the great things that Sornex did was make those bumpers for the military and the kettlebell, and that was amazing. And I was happy to see that they did that. Yeah. It was exciting, talking to them.
By you, or I guess it would be San Diego County is where the SEALs are.
Yeah.
In Coronado, or that's not in Los Angeles, right?
No, that's about, I was going to say a 2-hour drive, but with traffic, you never know these days, probably 3 hours. Yeah, San Diego's the next major city down from Los Angeles.
Right.
Yeah. We have done, bits and pieces for the military down in San Diego. Our stainless steel easy curl bar, they've bought a lot of, and various parts. So,
right. The so the story of that easy curl bar that I've shared on YouTube several times that I purchased from Sornex, that's an Ivanko easy curl bar.
Oh, the extra long one.
Right.
Yeah.
It could handle so much weight. What is the weight tolerance? I don't know how to properly say it. How much can that bar hold? Because they bench press with it.
Yeah. God, that's a real old one. I'd have to look back and see. I don't think you'd have a problem with 500.
That's insane. They're putting, I've seen, there was a guy who they tagged on Instagram and he was benching 2.25 or 3 plates on it.
Yeah.
I think, is it 30 pounds or 35-pound bar?
It's about 32, 33 pounds, I think. Yeah.
It's a beast. So we've got it. Yeah.
Yeah. We're making one just like it now. And we're actually looking, it's a project I'm working on now to make one out of stainless with extra long sleeves. Richard was asking me, hey, it'd be neat if you could do an easy curl bar with longer sleeves, but get me the same bends.
Right. Why would he want longer sleeves? How much?
Yeah, I think he wanted to put more weight on it.
I mean, okay. We could put 3 plates. I'm sure somebody. You're right. The sleeves are not as long as a traditional Olympic bar. It could fit in the rack.
Right.
You could get 3 plates on there.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So he wants people to bench 4 plates on that thing.
We didn't go into specifics, but that's what I assume. I mean, he wanted extra long sleeves. I figured that's what he's doing. Yeah.
That's impressive. What is, the most exciting thing you feel like you're working on now, with the company? What's exciting? And I don't know. We're going through a unique time because COVID, I don't know if it's over, right? But, we're walking around without masks. Gyms are open again. So that has probably changed things. So what's exciting for you working with this company that you guys have had staying power? Because I've been in this business, since early 2000s. But as a kid, I'm like you, I have that memory of things I've read. So when you mention a company, I'm like, oh, that company's not even around anymore.
Yeah,
you're still going.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting. Well, we're just grateful, first of all, to still be here after this, year.
Yeah.
I was super excited by going and visiting at Summer Strong.
Yeah. Was it reinvigorating for you? Because
yeah. I mean, I think that, with the lockdown, it was difficult not to feel a little beaten down by life. Just with all the work, basically just work, home.
Yes.
And, but, you do what you need to do, and best not to complain, or at least not in public.
Mm-hmm.
And just to yourself. So I'm excited to see things coming back. Especially, I'm excited to get back out there to meet customers, go back to Europe and see customers.
Where do you go in Europe? Because we have listeners.
We do a trade show called FIBO.
Germany. Essen, Germany still?
No, it's no longer in Essen. It's now in Cologne. I don't know how many years it's been there. I couldn't say. But
FIBO's been since I was 90s, there early 90s.
At Essen. And I remember how many companies had small little booths. Like Cybex, I think, had 4 small spaces.
Yeah.
Now they were huge. And I remember, so maybe, I'm also excited to, get our new website going, start, reaching out to people, making it easier for them to buy our stuff. We were probably a little slow on that. We probably neglected a little bit.
How do people buy from you? They contact?
They can either go through, we've got a couple online retailers.
Okay.
If the gyms who are buying a lot of equipment, oftentimes those equipment companies will offer our stuff. Or they can just call us or email us.
And I will do an intro separate to this so people know to go to Ivanko Barbell, Ivanko, barbell.com. So they They know to do that.
Yeah. So we want to just make it less of a pain in the ass. If a guy wants to buy one bar, he can just buy a bar or buy a pair of plates or
click a button. Like I think Amazon trained people to just click a few buttons.
Right. And it'd be nice to get into the 21st century, you know, we're maybe a little too focused on making the equipment.
Yeah.
And you know, we should actually make it a little easier for people to get it, you know, your garage gym owner. So that's what we're working on, and that's exciting. Yeah, so that's, you know, that's what we're doing. We're doing a couple other little projects, different t-shirt designs and that kind of thing. So that's exciting.
I wear my Ivanko t-shirt with pride. So pumped up to get that shirt. You know, it's crazy. I've grown up and continued to use your equipment since, I guess, when I joined Dynamic Fitness, I was 14. So I'm 45. So, you know, 31 years of using your equipment. That's crazy. That's longer than some of these strength coaches at these big schools have been alive.
Yeah, no, it's it's a good feeling to be a part of something that has continuity. And so, you know, it's important.
That's great. So I want to close out with this. You mentioned the garage gym lifter. You know, a lot of our listeners, they train in a garage. They're a high school strength coach. They've got a small warehouse gym. You have a few barbells, and I love them all. Some of them have just, you know, they're like basic one ring. What is it, the common barbell that the coach like myself purchases for their gym, whether it's a home gym or their strength and conditioning club?
Well, we've got a couple different options, but our basic would probably be the OBT 20 kg. And that is a 7'2" bar that weighs 20 kilograms, really good steel, black oxide finish with an IWF knurling dimensions without the center knurl.
Yeah.
And that's one of our basic bars. OB 20 kg is another that's got a slightly different knurl pattern. People like it a lot. That's probably our best selling. And either of those bars.
Does that one have a center knurl or no?
No, but you can get it with a center knurl. That's Obpx 20 kg.
Very cool. I was kind of, you know, at your booth at Summer Strong. I was with Pops, and we were kind of feeling all the bars. And he's like, I love this bar because of this knurling. And, you know, you get so into it in the same way that I imagine the guys do when they're at like a classic car show, and they're like, look at my transmission, and this is what I did to it. And we could talk about these things all day. The people who get us, they're in this kind of world, right? And so we don't feel weird that we're obsessed over barbells and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like anything else that, you know, sure, knife collecting, I don't know.
That's right. Yeah, any of that stuff. People who go
coins.
Correct. People who go hunting, you have your own little thing. So when I post, you know, this up on the website, Ivan, I'm going to link up, you know, these dumbbells, these bumpers and things like that. But for the people listening, they could go to Ivanko Barbell. There's a contact there that they could reach out to somebody who you could ask questions, and they could guide this person through, you know, whatever questions they have.
And coming soon, we'll have a website if you know what you want and you, you know, you want to make a quick purchase. That will be coming up.
Nice.
Sooner rather than later. So the back end's almost finished. Or you can always call us. You know, the guy working out of his garage that wants one thing is as important to us as some corporate guy that is outfitting a whole gym. So, you know, and so, you know, no matter how weird it gets, we like it for the most part. And
listen, who's weirder than us? Probably not too many people.
Not too many. No.
Yeah. So they'll be right in. And listen, it's good to just call and talk to somebody. And, you know, I always, even as experienced as I am, you know, I had a lot of questions for you. You know,
Yeah.
we were at Summer Strong and going through all the different barbells and using your equipment for 3 decades. I still have questions. So it's good for the coach, the lifter,
Right.
to, you know, make a phone call, ask questions, because, you know, whatever they buy from you guys, they will use for decades.
That's right.
And it could be passed down to generations. It's crazy and awesome at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Ivan, this will have to be continued. Maybe next time we get your dad on and see if he would like to discuss any stories. And how often does your dad come? I guess you're in the office / warehouse. How often does he show up?
He's here every day, almost every day.
Amazing. And how old is he now?
I think he's about to turn 79.
That's amazing. And what excites him about, you know, he loves this so much still. Doesn't want to.
Yeah. He likes to check everything out and walk around, make sure everybody's you know, on the stick.
Oh yeah.
So to speak, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is great. So when you're, you know, get a chance, send me photos of some of the stuff we spoke about, whether it's older stuff, new, current stuff, because I'd like to share a lot of that stuff on this post. This is episode 266. So when they go to my website, it's always ZachEvanesh.com/EP-266 or whatever the episode is. But this will be cool that now people will be able to find the first official interview on Ivanko Barbell.
That's right.
This is great, Ivan. So for my friends listening, my friends watching, you know, big thanks. Please share with a friend. If you want to leave a review, that helps so much. And then, you know, gift yourself. My wife doesn't like it, but when I have like a birthday, I don't go and like buy anything. I like to buy gym equipment. So, you know, it's always, you know, that's always like a good excuse for yourself. I bought myself a birthday gift, you just say.
That's
and I will leave with these final words. This is great. From have you spoken with my buddy Coop from Garage Gym Reviews?
No, I haven't.
He would be a great guy to get connected with. So his saying is, he goes, we have a saying, buy once, get slapped once, and then you're good. So, you know, your wife can only slap you once. That's it. So, there you go, guys. That is my closing comments when it comes to looking at gym equipment. So, Ivan, just stay on as I shut it down. Thanks again, everybody, and we will be back next time.